The lawyer told her she had inherited a property in Montana. But when she arrived at the address, all she found was a snow-covered mound that looked like something from a fairy tale. That is, until she pried open the frozen door and discovered what had been hidden beneath the ice for 30 years. A secret so valuable, so impossible, it would make the man who abandoned her sick with regret and transform her from a betrayed, broken single mother into someone who would never be ignored again. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will blow your mind. The fluorescent lights of the 24-hour diner hummed above Maya's head as she wiped down the counter for the 1,000th time that shift. It was 2 in the morning on a Tuesday, and the late-night crowd had finally thinned to a single trucker nursing his third cup of coffee in the corner booth. Her feet ached inside the cheap sneakers she'd bought at the discount store 3 weeks ago, the ones that were supposed to last 6 months, but were already splitting at the seams after just 21 days of constant use. She was 32, but when she caught her reflection in the chrome napkin dispenser, she looked closer to 45. Dark circles hung under her green eyes, like bruises that wouldn't fade, and her honey blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail, so tight it gave her a headache. But it was better than having it fall in her face while she worked. Better than looking unprofessional at any of her 3 jobs. She'd learned that lesson the hard way during her afternoon shift at the call center, then her evening shift at the grocery store, and now this graveyard shift, which kept her on her feet until 6 a.m. 3 jobs, 7 days a week, 84 hours if she was lucky enough to get full shifts, and she was still the $600 short on rent. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket, and her heart seized for a moment. That familiar jolt of panic had become her constant companion. She pulled it out cautiously, dreading what she might see. Another late notice, another threatening text from a bill collector, another email from her ex-husband's lawyer with more demands, more ways to twist the knife. But it was none of those. It was a text from her neighbor, Debbie, the 68-year-old retired teacher who watched her daughter, Harper, when Maya's shifts overlapped, which was almost always these days. Harper's asleep. Made her mac and cheese for dinner. Don't you dare try to pay me. That child is a blessing, and you're doing the best you can. Get home safe. Maya's eyes burned, not from exhaustion, though there was plenty of that, but from the kindness of the message. Deb had been the only constant in their lives since Maya's husband, the man she'd trusted with everything, had walked out on her 8 months and 13 days ago. Not that she was counting. Except she was. She counted every day, every hour sometimes, trying to make sense of how her life had unraveled so completely. He'd taken more than just his clothes and his pickup truck when he left. He'd emptied their savings account. $3,200 they'd scraped together over 5 years. He'd maxed out the credit cards in her name, $17,000 in charges she knew nothing about. He'd stopped paying the mortgage on their house without telling her, and by the time she found out, they were 4 months behind and facing foreclosure. And then, as if that wasn't enough, he'd filed for divorce and demanded she pay him alimony, claiming she was the family's primary breadwinner. The lawyer had called it financial infidelity, a betrayal as profound as any affair. Maya called it what it was: theft, cruelty, and the systematic destruction of everything she had ever worked for. She texted back a heart emoji, the only thing she could manage without breaking down in the middle of the diner, and put the phone away. The trucker waved for his check, and Maya forced a smile as she walked over, her feet screaming with every step. The total was $9.47. He left $12 on the table, which meant a $2.53 tip. She pocketed the cash without comment, added it to the mental tally of what she'd earned that night, and turned to start closing up. The bell on the door chimed, and she looked up, ready to tell whoever it was that the kitchen was closed and she could only offer coffee. But the man who stepped inside wasn't looking for eggs or pie or a place to sit after a long drive. He wore a dark wool coat that looked expensive, carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than her car, and had the kind of polished look that was completely out of place in this roadside diner on the outskirts of Denver at 2:15 in the morning. "Are you Maya Thornton?" he asked, his voice calm and professional. Wary, as if she were being served papers, Maya was instantly on the defensive. Process servers didn't usually show up at 2 a.m. But she'd learned that debt collectors and lawyers had no concept of appropriate hours. "That depends on who's asking." "My name is Richard Caldwell. I'm an attorney with Caldwell and Associates in Billings, Montana." He reached into his coat, produced a business card, and slid it across the counter with 2 fingers, like he was dealing a card. "I've been trying to reach you for 3 weeks. Your phone has been disconnected." "Yeah, well, phone bills are a luxury right now," Maya said, her jaw tight. She'd had to choose between keeping her cell service and keeping the electricity on in her apartment. The electricity had won. "What do you want?" "I'm here regarding an inheritance." Maya almost laughed. The sound would have been bitter, harsh, entirely out of place. "You've got the wrong person. No one in my family has anything worth inheriting. We're the kind of people who inherit debt and bad luck, not property." "Your great-aunt, Eleanor Hartwick. She passed away 4 months ago, at the end of November." The name stirred something distant in Maya's memory, like a half-forgotten dream. Eleanor. She'd met her maybe twice as a child. Once at a family reunion when Maya was 6 or 7, and again at her grandmother's funeral when Maya was 12. A strange, quiet woman who lived somewhere remote and sent Christmas cards with no return address, just a postmark from Montana. Maya's mother had always spoken of her with a mixture of respect and unease, as if Eleanor was someone who existed just slightly outside the normal world. Someone who had chosen isolation over connection, for reasons no one quite understood. "I barely knew her," Maya said slowly. "I think I saw her twice in my entire life. Why would she leave me anything?" "I can't speak to her motivations," Richard said, pulling a thick manila envelope from his briefcase. "But according to her will, which was filed 23 years ago and never amended, you are the sole beneficiary of her estate. She has left you a property in Red Lodge, Montana, 23 acres and a residence. The estate has been in probate for the last 4 months, but everything was finalized last Friday. I have the deed here, along with the keys and directions to the property." Maya stared at the envelope as if it might explode, as if it were another trap, another betrayal waiting to spring. "What's the catch?" "There's always a catch. Are there back taxes, liens? Does it need an environmental cleanup? What am I really inheriting here?" Richard's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened slightly. "There's no catch, Ms. Thornton. The property is yours, free and clear. No mortgage, no liens, no environmental issues that I'm aware of. There are property taxes, of course, but they are paid up through the end of the year. After that, you'll have to maintain them, but the value is minimal for that area, about $800 a year." $800. Maya made that in a week, if she was lucky, and all 3 jobs gave her full hours. But the words that stuck in her mind, that echoed in her exhausted brain like a lifeline were free and clear. No mortgage, no rent, no landlord threatening eviction. What kind of residence? She asked carefully, trying to keep the hope from her voice. Hope was dangerous. Hope led to disappointment. Richard hesitated, and for the first time his professional mask slipped a fraction. It's unconventional. The locals call it the Hobbit House. It's built partially into a hillside. Very isolated. Your great-aunt was something of a recluse in her later years. I'll be honest with you, Ms. Thornton. It's been sitting empty since her death 4 months ago. I haven't seen the interior personally, but from the exterior appraisal we did for the probate, it looks like it needs work. How much work? I can't say for sure. How much work? Maya pressed. Are we talking a new coat of paint? Or are we talking a caved-in roof and black mold everywhere? The structure itself appears sound. It was built into the hillside in the early 50s, from what I understand, so it's over 70 years old. But your aunt maintained it until her death at 93. I believe it's habitable, just dated, and in need of updating. The property has been locked up since her passing. I have the keys, but I haven't been out there myself. It's quite remote, about 45 minutes outside of Red Lodge, high up in the mountains. Maya's mind raced. Montana. Remote. Mountains. A house. Even a rundown one. Even one built into a hillside like something out of a storybook, was more than she had now. She was 3 months behind on the rent for the tiny 2-bedroom apartment she shared with Harper. The landlord had already posted an eviction notice on her door 2 weeks ago. The court date was in 9 days. After that, they would be on the street. She was running on 4 hours of sleep a night when she was lucky, 3 when she wasn't, stretching every penny to keep a roof over Harper's head and food on the table. She had sold everything of value they owned. Her wedding band went first, melted down for gold because no one wanted a used ring from a failed marriage. Then her grandmother's locket, the only piece of jewelry she'd inherited. Then Harper's baby furniture, which they'd been saving for some distant, impossible future when Maya might have another child. It was all gone, piece by piece, to pay for groceries and electricity and the asthma medication Harper needed. Can I sell it? Maya asked, hating the desperate edge in her voice but too tired to care. If I inherit it, can I sell it immediately? You can do whatever you wish with it. It's yours, free and clear. I should mention, however, that the market for remote mountain properties in that area is limited. It may take time to find a buyer, and the price might not be what you expect. Unusual properties in isolated locations attract a very specific kind of buyer. Maya's hope flickered, but she pressed on. What's it worth, ballpark? Richard shifted his weight. With 23 acres and the structures, assuming everything is in reasonable condition, probably somewhere between $75,000 and $125,000. But that is a very rough estimate. You would need to have a proper appraisal done. $75,000. Even at the low end, that was enough to pay off her debts, put a down payment on a condo, and maybe even work 1 job instead of 3. It was enough to give Harper a childhood where her mother wasn't working every waking hour. It was enough to breathe. I'll take it, Maya said, the words tumbling out before she could second-guess them. Richard nodded and slid the envelope across the counter. The deed, keys, and directions are all in here. There is also a letter from your great-aunt. She left specific instructions that it be delivered to you personally. Not mailed, not left with anyone else. She wanted to make sure that you received it directly. Maya took the envelope, feeling the weight of it in her hand. It was heavier than she expected. Inside was a future she couldn't see yet, couldn't imagine. But for the first time in 8 months and 13 days, it felt like something other than drowning. It felt like maybe, possibly, against all odds, it was a way forward. "Is there anything else I need to know?" she asked. Richard hesitated again, and this time the pause was longer. "Miss Thornton, let me speak off the record for a moment. Your great-aunt was an unusual woman. The property is unusual. The town of Red Lodge is small, and people have long memories. If you decide to move there, you may find that people have opinions about your great-aunt and her property. I would suggest you keep an open mind and don't make any rash decisions until you've seen the place and understand what you're dealing with." Is that lawyer speak for "it's haunted" or something? It's lawyer speak for "your great-aunt valued her privacy fiercely, and not everyone understood or appreciated that. Be ready for questions, for curiosity, possibly from people who've been looking for a way onto that property for a long time." A chill traced a path down Maya's spine, but she pushed it away. She was too tired for cryptic warnings. "Noted. Thanks for finding me." Richard nodded, dropped a 20 on the counter for a coffee he hadn't ordered, and left without another word. Maya stood alone in the empty diner, clutching the envelope, the sound of her own heart thudding in her chest. She worked the rest of her shift in a daze, wiping down tables and sweeping the floor on autopilot, her mind a whirlwind of possibilities and fears. At 6 a.m., as the day shift arrived, she clocked out and drove home through the waking streets. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that she barely noticed. Deb was waiting on the front steps of their apartment building, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, as Maya climbed out of the car. "I inherited a house," Maya said, the words sounding absurd even as they left her lips. "In Montana, from a great-aunt I barely knew." Deb's eyebrows shot up. "Well, damn. That's not what I expected you to say. I figured maybe you got fired, or your ex pulled some new kind of crazy." "I don't know what to do," Maya admitted, sinking onto the step beside her friend. "I don't know anything about the house except that it's weird, remote, and it's mine. I don't have money to get there. I don't have money to move. I don't have money for anything." "How much do you need for gas to get to Montana?" Maya pulled out her phone and checked. "Red Lodge, Montana. It's about 900 miles. My car gets maybe 25 miles to the gallon. So, a lot of gas. At today's prices, maybe $160. Plus food, plus at least one night in a motel. And I have $300 to my name." "It's yours," Deb said. "I can't take your money." "Yes, you can. Because here's what I see. You're working 3 jobs to the bone, and you're still drowning. You have an eviction notice on your door and a court date in 9 days. You can stay here and fight a battle you can't win, or you can take a chance on something different. Maybe it's a disaster. Maybe the house is falling down. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's a fresh start." Maya's eyes burned with tears. She was too exhausted to hold them back. "What if I get there and it's nothing? What if I use everything I have to drive to Montana and the house is worthless and I can't sell it and I'm just stranded with nothing?" "Then you'll still have nothing, which is what you have now," Deb said gently. "But at least you'll have tried. At least you'll have given Harper a chance at something better. That little girl deserves a mother who isn't worked to the bone. She deserves a home, even if it's a weird one in Montana. Maya wiped at her eyes and stared at the envelope in her lap. He left me with nothing, took everything and left me with debt and shame. And this weight I can't seem to shake. What if I'm not strong enough to start over? You're strong enough to work 3 jobs and still raise your daughter with a smile, Deb said, as if reading her mind. You're strong enough to survive what he did to you. You are strong enough to drive to Montana and see what your great-aunt left you. Deb pushed the coffee into Maya's hands. Go pack. Get Harper. Take my $300 and go see what's waiting for you. 3 days later, Maya and Harper rolled into Red Lodge, Montana, in their 15-year-old Honda, its odometer ticking past 230,000 miles, everything they owned stuffed into trash bags in the back seat. The town was small, maybe 3,000 people, the kind of place where everybody knew everybody, and newcomers were noticed immediately. It sat at the base of the Beartooth Mountains, surrounded by pine forests, and the kind of vast silence Maya had forgotten existed, if she'd ever known it at all. Harper pressed her face to the window, her eyes wide with wonder. Mama, there are so many trees and mountains. Look how big they are. I see them, baby, Maya said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. They had been driving for 2 days straight, sleeping in the car at rest stops because even cheap motels were too much. Every muscle in Maya's body ached, and her eyes were gritty with exhaustion. But they had made it. That was something. They stopped at a gas station to fill up and ask for directions. The clerk, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and weathered skin, looked at the address Maya showed her, and her eyebrows shot up. You're headed to the Hartwick place? She asked. Yes, I'm Maya. I inherited it from my great-aunt, Eleanor. The woman's expression shifted to something Maya couldn't quite decipher. Sympathy, concern, curiosity. I'm Carol. I knew Eleanor. Not well, but enough to say hello when she came to town for groceries. She was a good woman, kept to herself mostly. That property of hers is something else. You know how to get there? I have the directions, but I've never been. Carol grabbed a piece of scrap paper and drew a simple map. Take Main Street east out of town. It'll turn into a county road after about 3 miles. Follow that for another 20 minutes or so. You'll see a dirt road on your left, marked by a big pine with a split trunk. Can't miss it. That'll take you up to the property, but the road is rough, real rough. Your car might struggle. We'll manage, Maya said, though her confidence was paper thin. Carol handed her the map, then added quietly, You might have folks asking questions. Eleanor kept that place sealed up tight for decades. A lot of people have been curious about what's up there. You don't owe anyone answers, you understand? It's your property now, your business. What kind of questions? Maya asked, feeling that familiar chill return. Mostly just nosiness. It's a small town, not much happens, a mysterious woman living alone up in the mountains. It gets stories started. Don't you let it bother you. But Maya was bothered. Bothered by the warnings, by the way people looked at her when she mentioned the property, by the growing sense that she had inherited more than just a piece of land and a strange house. Carol's directions led them out of town on a winding road that climbed steadily into the mountains. The trees grew denser, the air colder. Patches of old snow clung to the shaded hollows, despite it being early April, and slick spots of ice made the road treacherous. Maya's car groaned as it climbed, the engine straining. Are we almost there? Harper asked for the 3rd time. I think so, baby. Keep an eye out for a tree with a split trunk. They found it 15 minutes later, just as Carol had described. The dirt road branching off from it was little more than a trail, rutted and rocky. Maya's car bucked and scraped as it clawed its way higher, branches scraping along the sides. Harper gripped her seat, eyes wide. Then, the trees opened up, and Maya stopped the car so abruptly that Harper lurched forward against her seatbelt. Whoa, Harper breathed. Ahead of them, built directly into the side of a grassy hill, was the strangest structure Maya had ever seen. It wasn't so much a house as it was a part of the landscape itself, as if the mountain had simply grown a door and windows. The front was made of aged wood and dark stone, with a round wooden door painted a deep forest green that looked like it belonged in a storybook. Two small, round windows flanked the door, both caked with grime and thick cobwebs. The roof wasn't a roof at all, but the hillside itself, covered in earth, wild grasses, and the tiny wildflowers just beginning to bloom. Snow clung to the shaded areas, and massive icicles hung from the wooden eaves like crystal fangs. It looked abandoned. It looked impossible. It looked like something that shouldn't exist in the real world, as if it had been plucked from a fairy tale or a fantasy novel. "It's a Hobbit house," Harper whispered, her voice full of awe. "Like in the movies. Mama, we're gonna live in a real Hobbit house." Maya switched off the engine and just sat, her hands still on the wheel, staring. This was it. This was what she had driven 900 miles for. This was what she had bet her entire future on. A house built into a hillside in the middle of nowhere, with round doors and windows and a roof made of dirt. It looked like madness. It looked like isolation. It looked like the kind of place someone would choose if they wanted to disappear from the world completely. "It looks like magic," Harper said softly. And in spite of everything, the exhaustion, the fear, the uncertainty, Maya felt herself smile. "Yeah, baby, it really does." They got out of the car, their breath fogging in the cold mountain air. It was colder here than in town, the altitude stealing the early spring warmth. Maya hugged her thin jacket tighter, wishing for something warmer, and walked toward the door with Harper at her side, her small hand clutching Maya's. The round door was made of thick, hand-carved wood, the intricate patterns worn smooth by decades of weather. Vines grew around the frame and moss clung to the stone foundation. It looked as if it had been here forever, as if it had grown from the mountain itself rather than been built by human hands. Maya took out the key Richard had given her, an old iron thing that looked like it belonged to a medieval castle, heavy and ornate. She inserted it into the lock beneath the round brass doorknob. It wouldn't turn. She tried again, applying more pressure, jiggling it. Nothing. The lock was seized. "Maybe it's frozen," Harper suggested, reaching out to touch the door. Her fingers came away wet. "Mama, there's ice on it." Maya examined the lock more closely and saw that her 8-year-old was right. Ice had formed inside the mechanism, sealing it shut. But this wasn't just surface frost from the lingering winter. This ice seemed different, almost crystalline, growing from within the lock itself, as if it were part of the metal. She looked around for something to help and found a loose rock near the foundation. For the next 15 minutes, she carefully chipped away at the ice, trying not to damage the lock underneath. Her fingers grew numb, her knuckles scraped and raw. But slowly, the ice began to crack and fall away in strange, geometric pieces that didn't melt when they hit the ground. Finally, she heard a faint click deep inside the mechanism. She turned the key, felt resistance, and then movement. The lock opened with a sound like shattering glass. The door groaned inward on heavy hinges, releasing a rush of cold, stale air that smelled of earth and stone and something else Maya couldn't place. Something ancient. Something that had been sealed away for a very long time. The interior was dark. The round windows were too filthy to let in much light. Maya pulled out her phone and switched on the flashlight, sweeping its beam across the space before them. The main room was circular, maybe 25 feet across, with curving walls made of smooth stone and packed earth. The ceiling was supported by dark timber beams that disappeared into the hillside above. A large stone fireplace dominated the far wall, its chimney rising up to vent somewhere on the mountain above them. The floor was made of smooth river stones, laid in intricate patterns that spiraled out from the center of the room. The furniture was covered in dusty white sheets, sleeping ghosts whose shapes suggested a sofa, chairs, and a table. Shelves lined the curved walls, filled with books and objects Maya couldn't make out in the dim light. Everything was coated in a thick layer of dust, untouched for months, maybe years. But it wasn't the circular room, or the stone fireplace, or the furniture waiting under its shrouds that caught Maya's attention, that made her breath catch and her heart begin to pound. It was the doors. There were 3 of them, set into the curving wall at regular intervals. Each was made of heavy, dark wood, each carved with the same intricate patterns as the front door. But these doors were not merely locked, or dusty, or forgotten. They were frozen solid, not frozen in any normal sense. This wasn't just frost creeping in at the edges from the winter cold. These doors were encased in it, thick, crystalline ice that seemed to grow from the wood itself, coating the surfaces in translucent layers of blue and white. The ice was at least an inch thick in places, perhaps more, and it pulsed faintly under the beam of Maya's flashlight, as if it were alive, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. "Mom," Harper whispered, her voice small and frightened. "Why is there ice inside the house?" "I don't know, honey," Maya said, but her own voice trembled. She moved slowly toward the first door, reached out, and touched the ice. It was solid, hard as stone, and so cold it burned her fingertips. This wasn't normal ice. It wasn't water that had simply frozen in the cold. It was something else, something deliberately created. She moved to the second door. The ice here was even thicker, darker, almost opaque. She couldn't see the wood beneath it. The third door, the largest of the 3, and positioned directly opposite the main entrance, was the worst of all. The ice encasing it was nearly 2 inches thick, a solid mass of blue-white crystal that covered not only the door, but the frame around it and the stone wall on either side. Strange patterns swirled within the ice, geometric shapes that looked almost intentional, like script in some language Maya didn't know. "What's behind them?" Harper asked, moving closer to her mother. "I don't know," Maya said again. But a certainty tightened in her chest. Whatever Eleanor had locked behind these frozen doors, whatever she had hidden in the heart of this strange hillside house, it was important. It was valuable. And it was the reason for all the warnings, all the curious stares, all the mystery. She pulled out the envelope Richard had given her, the one containing Eleanor's letter, which she still hadn't read. Now, standing in this impossible place with 3 frozen doors before her and a daughter who needed answers she couldn't give, Maya knew it was time. Her hands trembled as she tore open the envelope and unfolded the heavy paper within. The letter was written in a fine, elegant hand on thick stock that had yellowed with age. Maya held it under the beam of her phone's flashlight and began to read. My dearest Maya, if you are reading this, then I have finally left this world, and you have made the journey to find what I left behind. I am sorry we never knew each other better. Your mother and I had our differences, disagreements that seemed important at the time, but now feel foolish from the perspective of 93 years lived. I chose a solitary life that left little room for family, and for that I have regrets, but I have watched from a distance, as much as one can from these mountains. I know what you have been through. I know about the man who betrayed you, who took everything and left you with nothing but debt and a broken heart. I know because someone did the same to me 72 years ago, though my story was different. I had something he wanted desperately, something I had spent years collecting and protecting. He tried to charm it from me first, then he threatened me, and finally he tried to steal it outright. He failed, but only because I was willing to disappear completely. Behind the frozen doors, you will find what I have protected for all these decades. It is yours now, all of it, every piece. But I must warn you, there are others who have been searching for this collection for a very long time. They will come when they learn you have inherited this place. They will offer you money that seems impossible to refuse. They will make threats disguised as friendly concern. They will try to charm or frighten you into giving them access to what is inside. Do not trust them. Do not open these doors for anyone but yourself. The ice will melt when you are ready. I know this must sound like the ramblings of an old woman who spent too long alone, but it is the truth. The house knows. It protects what needs protecting until the right person arrives. You are the right person, Maya. You are stronger than you think, stronger than he made you believe you were. Inside those rooms you will find not only objects of value, but answers. You will understand why I lived the way I did, why I kept the world at arm's length for 70 years. And I hope, my dear girl, that what you find will give you what it gave me. Freedom. Not just from poverty or debt, but from the belief that your worth is tied to the opinion of others. Trust yourself. Trust the house. And when you are ready, the ice will yield. With the love I should have shown in life, Eleanor Hartwick. Maya read the letter 3 times, her hands shaking more with each pass. The ice will melt when you are ready. What did that mean? How could ice know when someone was ready for anything? It was frozen water, not a mystical guardian. But as she looked again at the 3 doors, at the way the ice seemed to pulse faintly in the light, she couldn't shake the feeling that Eleanor's words weren't a metaphor. They were instructions. "Mom, what does the letter say?" Harper asked. "It says this place is special," Maya said softly, "and that we need to be patient." That night, they made camp in the circular great room. Maya managed to build a fire in the stone hearth with firewood she found stacked in an outbuilding, protected from the elements by a thick tarp. The fire caught easily, as if it had been waiting for someone to light it, and soon its warmth began to fill the space. They ate granola bars and canned soup heated over the flames, their last supplies from the road. Harper fell asleep quickly, exhausted from 2 days in the car, curled in blankets Maya had pulled from the sheet-draped furniture. But Maya stayed awake, watching the frozen doors in the firelight. They seemed to glow from within, the ice catching and reflecting the flames in patterns that shifted and danced. She took out her phone and Googled Eleanor Hartwick. The signal was weak but present, likely from a cell tower in Red Lodge. The search returned surprisingly little. A local newspaper obituary that gave no details beyond her age and the fact that she had lived in the area for 70 years, and a mention in a 1953 geological survey of Montana mineral deposits, listing Eleanor Hartwick as a contributor. Nothing else. No social media, no photographs, no interviews or articles. It was as if Eleanor had carefully erased herself from the digital world. Maya tried different searches. Montana gemstones, rare mineral collections, women geologists, 1940s. She found some general information, but nothing that connected specifically to Eleanor or explained what could possibly be behind those frozen doors. Finally, exhausted, she lay down beside Harper and closed her eyes. Sleep came in fragments, broken by strange dreams of ice and stone and doorways that led to impossible places. She woke to sunlight streaming through the round windows. Harper was already up, exploring the main room, carefully lifting the sheets from the furniture to reveal pieces that looked handmade and surprisingly beautiful. A sofa with carved wooden arms, chairs upholstered in a faded but elegant fabric, a dining table made from a single slab of polished wood that must have come from a massive tree. "Mom, look," Harper said, pointing to the shelves that lined the walls. "There are so many books." Maya got up and stretched, every muscle in her body protesting. She walked to the nearest shelf and pulled out a leather-bound volume at random. The title was embossed in gold. Mineralogy of the Rocky Mountains, published in 1946. She pulled another. The Gemstones of North America. Another. Geological Formations of Montana and Wyoming. Every book on the shelves was about geology, minerals, gemstones, or the history of mining in the American West. There were hundreds of them, perhaps thousands, lining every available inch of wall space. "Your great-aunt really liked rocks," Harper observed. "Yes," Maya said quietly. "She really did." She made breakfast with what was left of their groceries, scrambled eggs cooked over the fire in a cast-iron skillet she found in the stone kitchen alcove. They ate in silence, both of them staring at the frozen doors. After breakfast, Maya decided to try again. She had found tools in the outbuilding, a hammer, several chisels, a crowbar, all old but well-maintained. She started on the smallest door, to the left of the fireplace. The ice was harder than she'd expected, almost like stone. She chipped at it carefully, not wanting to damage the wood underneath. Harper watched, asking questions Maya couldn't answer. "Why did Aunt Eleanor freeze the doors? What's inside? When can we open them?" It took most of the morning, but finally, the ice around the first door's lock began to crack and fall away. The pieces didn't melt when they hit the floor. They shattered into geometric fragments that looked more like quartz than frozen water. With trembling hands, Maya inserted the key, turned it, and heard a click that echoed through the circular room. The door swung open. The room beyond was small, perhaps 10 feet by 10 feet, carved directly into the hillside. But unlike the dusty, neglected great room, this space was immaculate. A warm light flooded the area from somewhere above, a shaft cut into the mountain that Maya couldn't see but could feel, bringing in natural illumination. Shelves lined every wall, floor to ceiling, and on those shelves were hundreds of leather-bound journals, each with dates that ran from 1945 all the way to what looked like just a few months before Eleanor's death. "Books," Harper said, disappointed. "Just more books." But Maya understood immediately. These weren't just books. This was Eleanor's life, documented in careful detail, year by year, thought by thought. She pulled one at random and opened it. The date inside was June 12, 1953. The handwriting was the same elegant script as the letter. He came by again today, more insistent this time. He calls himself a collector, but I see him for what he is, a thief in expensive clothes. He knows I have the complete set of Montana sapphires, the one it took me 8 years to assemble. He offered me $50,000 for it, what he thought would be enough to make a poor field geologist sell her life's work. I laughed in his face. These specimens are not for sale. They belong to the earth, to history, to anyone who wishes to properly study them, not to a private collector who will lock them in a vault to boast about. Maya's pulse quickened. She grabbed another journal, this one from 1947. Today I acquired what I believe to be the finest Yogo sapphire specimen ever found. The mine owner wanted to keep it, but I convinced him it belonged in a proper collection where it could be documented and studied. I have now cataloged 47 unique specimens from Montana alone. The collection is growing faster than I expected. I am beginning to realize I may need to find a more secure place to store it. My apartment in Billings feels more vulnerable by the day. Another journal, 1951. I have made the decision. I will build a house in the mountains, somewhere remote enough that casual visitors will not find it. A place where I can create proper storage and security. The collection is too valuable now, too important. If certain people knew the full extent of what I have, they would stop at nothing to take it. I have had my research stolen once before by a man I trusted. I will not let that happen again. Maya closed the journal and looked around with a new understanding. Eleanor wasn't a recluse by nature. She was a protector, hiding something from people who wanted to steal it. "Mom, can we see what's in the other rooms?" Harper asked. Maya nodded slowly. "Yes, sweetie. I think we need to." The second door took less time. Perhaps Maya was just getting better at chipping away the ice. Or perhaps, as Eleanor's letter had suggested, the house sensed she was ready. Either way, in less than an hour, she had the lock cleared and the door open. This room was larger, perhaps 15 feet square, and it took Maya's breath away. It was set up like a laboratory from another era. Long wooden tables held scientific equipment, microscopes that looked as if they belonged in a museum, brass scales for weighing samples, and measuring tools with tiny gradations marked in languages Maya couldn't read. Glass-fronted cabinets lined the walls, their contents shielded by thick doors. Maya walked slowly to the nearest one, almost afraid of what she would find. She wiped the condensation from the glass and peered inside. Stones. Dozens upon dozens of stones, each carefully labeled and arranged. But these weren't ordinary rocks. Even through the glass, even in the faint light from above, they glowed with an inner light that seemed impossible. Some were translucent, like colored glass. Others were opaque, but reflected the light in a way that made them shimmer. They ranged in size from smaller than Harper's thumb to as large as Maya's fist. She found the latch on the cabinet and opened it carefully. The rush of cool air that escaped smelled of stone and wild thyme. She reached for the nearest specimen, reading the handwritten tag attached to it. Montana Yogo Sapphire, 5.3 carats, cornflower blue, acquired April 1948 from Rock Creek Deposit. Exceptional clarity, historical significance, represents best color saturation documented from this region. Maya's hands began to tremble. She set the sapphire down gently and picked up another specimen. Colorado Aquamarine, 11.7 carats, from the Mount Antero deposit, acquired in June of 1950. Museum-grade clarity, its natural crystal formation perfectly intact. Another, an Idaho star garnet, 7.2 carats, from Emerald Creek, acquired in March of 1952. A four-rayed star phenomenon, an extremely rare color variation. Maya's knees grew weak. She sank to the floor, the garnet still in her hand, and tried to process what she was seeing. Eleanor hadn't just been collecting rocks. She had been assembling what appeared to be a comprehensive collection of rare gemstones from all over the American West, each one documented, studied, and preserved. "Pretty," Harper said, peeking into the cabinet. "Can I hold one?" "Very carefully," Maya whispered. They spent the next hour examining the cabinets. Each one contained dozens of specimens, all labeled, all extraordinary. Sapphires in hues Maya never knew existed, garnets that glittered like fire, topazes the color of honey and wine, tourmalines in shades of pink, green, and blue, and opals that seemed to hold entire rainbows within them. And that was just the first cabinet. There were 12 more lining the walls. With trembling hands, Maya took out her phone and began taking pictures. She photographed the labels, the specimens, the equipment, everything. Then she started searching online. Value of Montana Yogo sapphire, rare American gemstones, geological collection appraisal. What she discovered made her dizzy. A single, high-quality Yogo sapphire could be worth thousands of dollars per carat. The aquamarines from Mount Antero were among the finest in the world, museum pieces that rarely reached the market. The star garnets from Idaho were extraordinarily rare, especially those displaying the star phenomenon. And Eleanor had hundreds of them, perhaps thousands. Maya put down her phone and looked at Harper, who was carefully examining a piece of pink tourmaline in the overhead light, watching it sparkle. "Sweetheart," Maya said softly, "I think Great-Aunt Eleanor, she left us something very, very valuable." But this discovery was only the beginning. What would follow would turn her world upside down, revealing threats Maya could never have imagined, and testing whether a betrayed single mother had the strength to protect a fortune that powerful people had been hunting for 70 years. The third door was the largest, and the ice encasing it was the thickest. Maya worked for 3 hours, chipping away at it with a growing sense of desperation. Now that she knew what Eleanor was protecting, now that she understood the value of what was hidden in this mountain home, she had to see what lay behind that final door. The ice finally gave way as the afternoon light began to fade. The door opened not to another small room, but to a tunnel descending deeper into the mountain. Smooth stone steps led down into the darkness. Maya grabbed a flashlight from the supplies they'd brought and started down, Harper close behind, her small hand clutching the back of Maya's jacket. The tunnel descended at least 30 feet, perhaps more, carved from solid rock with impressive precision. At the bottom, it opened into a chamber that took Maya's breath away. It was enormous, at least 40 feet wide and 20 feet high, with a ceiling that had been smoothed and reinforced with timber beams. But it was what filled the chamber that made Maya's heart stop. Display cases. Dozens of them, perhaps 50 or more, all made of glass and wood, all lit by some kind of internal lighting system that was, impossibly, still functioning after decades of disuse. And inside those cases, arranged like exhibits in the finest natural history museum, were gemstones. Not just gemstones, but the collection. The most complete assembly of rare American minerals and gems Maya had ever seen, or even imagined. She walked through the chamber in a daze, reading labels, gazing at specimens that looked too perfect to be real. A sapphire the size of a plum, so blue it looked like concentrated sky. A massive aquamarine crystal whose color shifted from pale ice to deep teal, depending on the angle of the light. Garnets that ranged from deep red to purple to green. Topaz in imperial gold. Black opals from Nevada that seemed to contain entire galaxies. Each specimen had a detailed card describing where it was found, when, under what circumstances, and what made it significant. Eleanor had documented everything with the precision of a scientist and the passion of someone who truly loved her subject. In the center of the room was a large wooden desk, and on it lay a leather-bound book, different from the journals upstairs. This one bore the simple title, Collection Inventory. Maya opened it with trembling hands. Inside, every specimen was listed: size, weight, type, origin, acquisition date, and an estimated value. As of 1998, when the last entry was made, the values were staggering, ranging from thousands to tens of thousands of dollars per piece. But at the very end of the inventory, on the last page, Eleanor had written a final note. Total collection: 347 primary specimens, 1,236 secondary specimens. Full documentation, photographs, and geological surveys included. Total estimated value in 1998, $18.4 million. Adjusted for appreciation and market rarity, current value likely exceeds $45 million. This collection represents 37 years of work across 12 states. It is the most comprehensive survey of American gemstone deposits in private hands. It belongs to someone who will protect it, study it, and eventually share it with the world. Not to one who would lock it away merely for profit. Maya sat down hard in the wooden chair behind the desk. $45 million. The number was so vast, it didn't feel real. She had been worrying about $600 for rent, about $800 in property taxes, about whether she could feed her daughter. And Eleanor had left her a fortune beyond imagination. "Mommy, is this worth a lot of money?" Harper asked, pressing her face against one of the glass cases. "Yes, sweetie," Maya whispered. "A lot of money. More money than I can really understand." "Does this mean we can stay here? We don't have to go back to that apartment?" Tears welled in Maya's eyes. "Yes, we can stay. We never have to go back." They spent the rest of the afternoon in the subterranean chamber, Maya photographing everything, taking notes, trying to comprehend what she had inherited. It wasn't just money. While the financial security alone was life-changing, this was a legacy. It was history. It was scientific importance. Eleanor had built something remarkable, something that deserved to be preserved and studied. As they climbed the stone steps and emerged back into the circular room, now lit by the warm glow of the setting sun, through the round windows, Maya felt something shift inside her. For 8 months, she had felt like a victim, someone who had lost everything, who was powerless to change her circumstances, who was drowning and couldn't reach the surface. But standing here, in Eleanor's house, surrounded by the proof of one woman's lifelong determination and genius, Maya realized she wasn't powerless. She never had been. She had survived betrayal. She had worked 3 jobs to keep her daughter fed and safe. She had driven 900 miles on faith and desperation to claim an inheritance she knew nothing about. She was stronger than she gave herself credit for. And now, she had the resources to prove it. That night, after Harper had fallen asleep, Maya sat by the fireplace and began to make plans. She would need to secure the house properly, change the locks, maybe install a security system somehow, despite the remote location. She would need to have the collection properly appraised, insured, and protected. She would need legal advice on how to manage this kind of asset, how to keep taxes from decimating its value, and how to eventually donate or sell pieces in a way that honored Eleanor's wishes. But those were problems for tomorrow. Tonight, she just let herself feel it. Relief, hope, the possibility of a future that didn't involve working herself to exhaustion while barely scraping by. She was reaching for a notebook to start jotting down tasks when she heard a noise outside. The headlights of a vehicle swept across the round windows. Maya's heart leaped. No one knew she was here. No one except Richard, the lawyer, and Carol from the gas station. She reached for her phone, but there was no signal. The mountains had swallowed it whole. An engine cut out. A car door slammed. Footsteps crunched on the gravel path approaching the door. 3 sharp knocks echoed through the circular room. Maya rose slowly, every instinct screaming danger. She moved to stand between the door and where Harper slept, her body automatically shifting into a protective stance. "Who is it?" she called out. "My name is James Whitmore," a man's voice replied. It was friendly, cultured, with just a hint of impatience. "I'm a collector of geological specimens. I heard through mutual contacts that Eleanor Hartwick's estate had finally passed to a new owner. I was hoping I might have a word with you." Every alarm in Maya's head went off at once. Eleanor's letter echoed in her mind. "They will come. They will offer you money. Do not trust them." "It's late," Maya called back. "And I'm not interested in selling anything." "I'm not asking you to sell. I just want to talk." "Eleanor and I corresponded for years about her collection. I have some information that might be valuable to you." Maya didn't move toward the door. "Then you can come back tomorrow during the day. And call first." "Ms. Thornton, I think you'll want to hear what I have to say. The collection Eleanor assembled isn't entirely, legally hers. Some of those specimens came from disputed claims. There are pieces that have legitimate ownership questions. I can help you navigate that complexity, but only if we establish a relationship of trust." Maya's fists clenched. This was exactly what Eleanor had warned about. Threats disguised as friendly concern. Claims of legal complications designed to make her doubt, to frighten her, to make her vulnerable to manipulation. "Go away," Maya said, her voice firm. "Now, or I'm calling the sheriff." "There's no cell service up here," James said, and now the friendly tone was laced with an aggressive edge. "I checked. It's very isolated. This place is very remote. Accidents happen in the mountains. People get lost. It would be a terrible thing if something happened to you and your daughter before you had a chance to properly secure such a valuable collection." The threat was unmistakable. Maya's blood ran cold, but not with fear, with anger. The same rage that had sustained her through 8 months of her ex-husband's betrayals, of backbreaking work, of every moment someone had tried to make her feel small and powerless. "My daughter and I are armed," Maya lied, her voice steady. "And I'm a very good shot. You have 10 seconds to get back in your car and leave, or I'm coming out with my shotgun. 1, 2, 3. She counted aloud, clear and unwavering, despite the fear coursing through her veins. At 7, she heard footsteps moving quickly away. At 9, the car engine roared to life. At 10, the headlights vanished into the darkness. Maya stood frozen by the door for a long moment, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Then she moved quickly, shoving the heavy wooden furniture, the sofa, the armchairs, against the door, building a barricade. She checked on Harper, who was somehow still sleeping, undisturbed by the confrontation. She grabbed the crowbar from her tool pile and sat with her back against the door, her makeshift weapon in hand, staring out into the dark. She did not sleep that night. She sat and watched and listened and understood that Eleanor's warnings were entirely real. There were people who wanted what was in this house, people who had been waiting for 70 years for a chance to claim it. People who saw Maya not as a person with rights and resolve, but as an obstacle to be removed. But as the long night slowly gave way to dawn, Maya's fear transformed into something else: determination. Eleanor had protected this collection for decades. She had hidden it, defended it, kept it safe from people like James Whitmore, and now that responsibility had passed to Maya. She thought of her ex-husband, of how he had robbed her, betrayed her trust, and left her with nothing. She thought of all the men in her life who had underestimated her, dismissed her, and assumed she was weak because she was kind. They were all wrong, and James Whitmore was about to find that out. When the sun finally rose, filling the circular room with light, Maya stood up, stretched her aching muscles, and made a decision. She was not going to run. She was not going to sell. She was not going to be intimidated or threatened into giving up what Eleanor had entrusted to her. She was going to stay. She was going to fight. And she was going to protect this collection with everything she had, because for the first time in her life, Maya Thornton had something worth fighting for, something that was truly hers. And no one, not her ex-husband, not some mysterious collector, not anyone, was ever going to take it from her. The morning after James Whitmore's visit, Maya drove to Red Lodge with Harper buckled into the passenger seat, a fiery determination burning in her chest that she hadn't felt in years. She had spent the early hours poring over more of Eleanor's journals, piecing together a history of threats and attempts to steal the collection that stretched back decades. Eleanor had documented it all. Every offer, every threat, every person who had come snooping around the property. And one name appeared more than any other: Whitmore. Not James, but his father, Thomas Whitmore, who had been pursuing Eleanor's collection since 1953. The same man Eleanor had mentioned in her diaries. The one who called himself a collector, but who was, in truth, just a thief in expensive clothes. Apparently, the obsession had been passed from father to son like a twisted inheritance. Maya's first stop was the sheriff's office, a small brick building on Main Street that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1970s. The sheriff, a man in his 50s with kind eyes and a weathered face, introduced himself as Robert Chen. "I need to report a threat," Maya said, taking a seat across from his desk, while Harper colored in a chair by the window. "A man named James Whitmore came to my property last night, after dark, uninvited. He threatened me and my daughter when I refused to discuss my great-aunt's collection with him." Sheriff Chen's expression shifted from curious to concerned. "What exactly did he say?" Maya recounted the conversation word for word. She had replayed it in her mind so many times during the sleepless night that every detail was seared into her memory. When she finished, the sheriff leaned back in his chair and sighed. "The Whitmores," he said. "I was afraid of this. Your great-aunt Eleanor had a restraining order against Thomas Whitmore back in 1996. He violated it twice before he finally passed away in 2008. I was hoping his son would have more sense. Look, everyone in town knows Eleanor Hartwick had something valuable up there. No one knew exactly what, But the Whitmores have been circling that property like vultures for 50 years. Thomas tried everything. Lawsuits claiming Eleanor stole specimens from his father's collection. Attempts to buy the land through shell corporations. Even trying to claim some sort of mineral rights. Eleanor fought him off every single time, but it cost her. Legal fees, security measures, isolation. She paid a price to protect what she had. Maya felt a surge of connection to Eleanor, this woman she barely knew. They were both forced to fight against men who thought they had a right to take what wasn't theirs. "What can I do?" Maya asked. "File a formal complaint. I'll document everything. I can increase patrols near your property, but I'll be honest with you, Ms. Thornton. We're a small department, and your place is pretty remote. Best thing you can do is install security. Make sure you're never up there alone and document everything. If Whitmore comes back, you call me immediately." "I don't have cell service up there." "Then get a satellite phone. I can recommend a company. They're not cheap, but given the situation, it's necessary." Maya thanked him and left, feeling both validated and terrified. The threat was real. The danger was real. And she was facing it essentially alone, with an 8-year-old daughter depending on her. Her next stop was the library, a handsome stone building that looked as though it had stood for a century. The librarian, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and graying hair, introduced herself as Margaret. "You're Eleanor's great niece," Margaret said immediately. "I heard you'd arrived. I'm so sorry for your loss. Eleanor was a remarkable woman." "Did you know her well?" "As well as anyone could. She'd come into town maybe once a month for supplies and books. We'd talk about geology, history, the mountains. She had a brilliant mind." Margaret paused. "She also had enemies. I take it you've already met one of them." "James Whitmore came to the house last night." Margaret's face hardened. "Of course he did. Like father, like son. Eleanor used to say the Whitmores represented everything wrong with collecting. Greed instead of knowledge, possession instead of stewardship, profit instead of preservation. They wanted her collection locked away in some private vault. She wanted it studied, documented, and eventually donated to institutions where it could educate people." "I found journals," Maya said. "Hundreds of them. She documented everything about the collection. But there's so much I don't understand. I was hoping maybe the library had resources on geology, gemstones, legal protections for collections like this." Margaret smiled. "I have something better. Follow me." She led Maya to a back room marked Local History Archives. Inside, she pulled out a box labeled Hartwick, Eleanor, Donated Materials. Eleanor donated copies of some of her research to the library back in the late 80s. She said if anything ever happened to her, she wanted there to be a public record of her work. Maps, surveys, photographs of specimens, even correspondence with other geologists and museum curators. "It's all here." Maya stared at the boxes. There were 5 of them. She felt tears welling in her eyes. Eleanor had been preparing for this, ensuring her work would survive even if she didn't. "There's also this," Margaret said, retrieving a sealed envelope with Maya's name on it. "Eleanor dropped this off 3 years ago. She said, if anyone by this name ever comes asking, you give this to her." Maya took the envelope with trembling hands. She knew I would come. Eleanor had a way of seeing things clearly. She understood people, understood how the world worked. She knew the Whitmores wouldn't stop. She knew that whoever inherited the collection would need help. Margaret squeezed Maya's hand. "You're not alone in this. This town may be small, but Eleanor was respected here. We look out for our own, and you're one of us now. Maya opened the envelope later, sitting in the car while Harper ate a sandwich they'd picked up from the local diner. Inside was another letter, in Eleanor's distinctive script. My dearest Maya, if Margaret has given you this, then you have begun to understand what you have inherited and what it means. The collection is priceless, but not just in monetary terms. It represents knowledge, history, the story of the American West told through stones that formed over millions of years. It deserves to be protected, studied, and eventually shared with the world. But I know the Whitmores will come for it. Thomas tried for 43 years to take it from me. His son James will try to take it from you. You will need help, and I have arranged for it. Contact my attorney, not Richard Caldwell, who handled the probate, but my personal lawyer, Helena Reeves, in Billings. She has documents I prepared, legal protections I put in place years ago. She knows everything, and she can help you navigate what's to come. You will also need expert knowledge. Dr. Sarah Chan at Montana State University was a student of mine 30 years ago. Now she is one of the top gemologists in the country. She knows the collection and has agreed to help authenticate and document it properly. Her contact information is enclosed. Finally, and most importantly, trust yourself. Trust your instincts. The collection chose you as much as I did. The house, the ice, the way things revealed themselves to you. That was not random. You were meant to be its guardian. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. With faith in your strength, Eleanor. Maya read the letter twice. Then she stared at the contact information Eleanor had included. Phone numbers, addresses, detailed notes on who these people were and how they could help. Even from beyond the grave, Eleanor was protecting her. Still fighting. She picked up her phone and dialed the number for Helena Reeves. A professional voice answered, and Maya explained who she was. I've been expecting your call, Helena said. Eleanor set up a specific trust fund for legal expenses related to protecting the collection. You have $500,000 available for lawyers, security, documentation, anything you need. And before you worry about taxes or complicated legal structures, Eleanor took care of all of that decades ago. The collection is held in an educational trust that passes to you as the trustee, which means significant tax protections. $500,000. Maya's voice failed her. Eleanor had been so meticulous. She knew this wouldn't be easy. Can you come to Billings tomorrow? Helena asked. We have a lot to discuss, and there are documents you need to sign. Maya agreed, her head spinning as she hung up. In less than 24 hours, she had gone from being terrified and alone to discovering she had a lawyer, funding, and a support system Eleanor had carefully built over decades. The next morning, Maya made the 2-hour drive to Billings with Harper. Helena's office was in a modern downtown building, and the lawyer herself was formidable. She was a woman in her 60s, dressed in an elegant suit, with the kind of presence that suggested she'd never lost a case she cared about. Eleanor was one of my first clients when I started my practice in 1989, Helena explained as they sat in her conference room. She hired me specifically to create legal protections for the collection. We established the educational trust. We filed the paperwork with every relevant authority. And we created a paper trail that establishes beyond any doubt that every specimen in that collection was acquired legally. James Whitmore said some of the specimens came from disputed claims. Helena's smile was sharp. James Whitmore is a liar. His father made the same claims for decades, and we defeated every single one of them in court. The truth is, the Whitmores had the opportunity to acquire many of these specimens and chose not to because they didn't understand their value. Eleanor did. She had the knowledge, the patience, and the integrity to build something remarkable. The Whitmores are simply bitter that they missed their chance. So what happens now? Now, we go on the offensive. I'm filing for a restraining order against James Whitmore based on his threats. I will also be sending cease and desist letters to every collector and dealer we know has been sniffing around this property. And we will get the collection properly documented and authenticated, so there is no question as to its provenance or value. Helena slid a thick binder across the table. This is everything. The trust documents, the insurance policies Eleanor maintained, letters from museum curators expressing interest in eventual acquisition or loan of specimens, and authentication reports from the 80s and 90s. Eleanor spent 50 years building an unassailable legal and scientific record. You are not starting from scratch. You are standing on the foundation she built. Maya felt tears tracking down her cheeks. Why? Why would she do all this for me? She barely knew me. She knew you better than you think, Helena said gently. Eleanor kept track of her family from a distance. She knew about your struggles, your ex-husband's betrayal, how hard you'd worked to get by. She saw in you a woman who was underestimated, overlooked, forced to fight for everything. She wanted to give you what no one ever gave her: support, resources, a way to fight back. They spent 4 hours going through documents, signing papers, and making plans. By the time Maya left Helena's office, she had a restraining order being filed, a security company contracted to install cameras and alarms at the house, and an appointment with Dr. Sarah Chan to begin the authentication process. She also had something else: hope. Real, tangible hope that she could actually do this, that she could protect what Eleanor had built and maybe, just maybe, build something of her own in the process. But that hope was tested 2 days later when Maya received a letter forwarded from her old address in Denver. It was from her ex-husband's lawyer. Dear Ms. Thornton, it has come to our client's attention that you have recently inherited property and assets of substantial value. As you know, your divorce settlement is still pending final approval. Our client believes he is entitled to 50% of all assets acquired during the marriage, which technically includes inheritances received before the divorce is finalized. We are prepared to file an emergency motion to freeze all inherited assets pending a fair division of marital property. Maya read the letter 3 times, the rage building with each pass. He had found out, somehow. Someone had told him about the inheritance, and now he wanted half of what Eleanor had spent 70 years building. Half of what had been hidden and protected and entrusted specifically to Maya. She called Helena immediately, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. Breathe, Helena said calmly after Maya read her the letter. This is to be expected. Parasites always show up when there's something to take. But here's what he doesn't know. The inheritance is not technically yours. You are the trustee of an educational trust. You don't own the collection. You manage it on behalf of the trust. There is nothing for him to claim. Are you sure? I am absolutely positive. Eleanor set this up specifically to protect against this very kind of claim. Your ex-husband has no legal standing. We will file a response making that crystal clear. And if he wants to push it, we will bury him in legal fees he can't possibly afford. Trust me, Maya. You are protected. But the letter had rattled something inside Maya. Though legally safe, the attack felt personal, a violation that reached across state lines and into the sanctuary she was trying to build. It was a stark reminder that the Whitmores weren't the only predators in the world, and that the fight to protect Eleanor's legacy and her own future had only just begun. For 8 months, she had lived in the shadow of her ex-husband, letting his betrayal define her, believing, on some level, that she deserved what had happened. Now, with Eleanor's legacy in her hands, she realized something fundamental had shifted. She was no longer a victim. She was a guardian, a steward, someone with purpose, resources, and support, and she would run no longer. That night, after Harper had fallen asleep, Maya sat by the fireplace and began to read more of Eleanor's journals. She found an entry from December of 1998 that made her freeze. I met with my doctor today and received confirmation of what I have suspected for months. The cancer is back. This time, it's aggressive. They give me 5 years, at most. I am 70 years old and have lived a good, if solitary, life. But I find myself thinking of legacy, of what will become of the collection when I am gone. I have set up legal protections, established a trust, documented everything, but I see now that it is not enough. The collection needs more than legal structures. It needs a person, someone who will love it as I have, who will fight for it as I have. Maya turned the page, her heart pounding. I have been thinking of my family, of the nieces and nephews I barely know. Most of them would not understand the collection, would not appreciate what it represents. But there is one, my grandniece, Maya. I met her twice when she was a little girl, and both times I saw something in her. A curiosity, a determination, a refusal to accept easy answers. She asked questions about the rocks I showed her. She wanted to know where they came from, how they were formed. She has the right spirit. I have followed her life from a distance, through her mother's Christmas cards and public records. She is studying to be a teacher, working 3 jobs to pay for college. She is the kind of person who doesn't give up, who doesn't take the easy way out. If I were to live another 20 years, if I were still here when she is older and has lived enough to understand what it truly means to protect something, I think I would leave it to her. But I must prepare things carefully, create the support systems she will need, because I know the Whitmores will not stop. They will see a young woman alone and think her an easy mark. They will be wrong, but she will need help to prove it. Maya closed the journal and sat in silence, tears streaming down her face. Eleanor had been watching her, believing in her, preparing for this moment for 25 years. The weight of that faith, that trust, was almost unbearable, but it was also transformative. Maya had spent so long believing she was ordinary, unremarkable, someone just trying to get by, to care for her daughter. But Eleanor saw something more. She believed Maya was capable of protecting something precious, of standing up to powerful people who would take it from her. Perhaps it was time for Maya to start believing it too. The following week brought a flurry of activity. Dr. Sarah Chen arrived from Montana State University with 2 graduate students and equipment to document and authenticate the collection. She spent 3 days in the subterranean vault, photographing, measuring, and running non-invasive tests. On the 3rd night, she sat with Maya by the fireplace, her expression grave. "This collection," Sarah said slowly, "is beyond anything I could have imagined. I have worked in major museums, private collections, university geology departments. I have never seen anything like it. The breadth, the quality, the documentation. Eleanor created something that belongs in the Smithsonian. Several pieces belong in the Smithsonian." She paused, gesturing toward the main vault. That Montana sapphire alone, the large one in the central case, is the finest specimen I have ever seen. It could be worth $3 million or more. Maya felt dizzy. 3 million? For one stone? Yes, and the entire collection is worth, conservatively, at least $60 million, perhaps more. Some of these specimens are one of a kind. They are scientifically significant, historically important, and breathtakingly beautiful. Eleanor spent her life gathering the crown jewels of American gemology. What am I supposed to do with it? Maya asked, her voice a whisper. Sarah looked at her, her gaze serious. That is not a decision you need to make right now. The collection is safe, it's being documented, it's protected. But eventually, you should consider what Eleanor wanted, for it to be studied, for people to learn from it. Perhaps a loan program to museums, perhaps an eventual donation with your name attached, so you retain some control. But that is years down the road. For now, just protect it. Love it as Eleanor did. Let it become a part of your life. Later that night, Maya stood alone in the vault, walking among the display cases with only a flashlight, listening. She let the beam of light catch and refract off specimens that had formed over millions of years, deep within the earth. She thought of Eleanor, of the lonely years spent guarding these treasures, of the sacrifice it must have taken to stand against the people who wanted to take them. She thought of her own journey, of betrayal and poverty, of the grinding fight for survival, of driving 900 miles on a whisper of hope and desperation, of prying open frozen doors and discovering that maybe, just maybe, she had been chosen for something important. The next morning, Carol from the service station appeared at the house with fresh groceries, and behind her was a small caravan. The librarian, Margaret, Sheriff Chen, a woman who introduced herself as the head of the local historical society, and 3 other townsfolk Maya had never seen. We heard you could use a hand, Carol said simply. Eleanor was one of us, even if she kept to herself. And now you're one of us too. We don't let outsiders push our people around. They spent the day helping Maya winterize the house, install a new security system, and clear the brush around the property to improve sightlines. They brought food, supplies, and something even more valuable: community. The Whitmores think money and threats will win, Sheriff Chen said as they worked. But they don't understand this town. We protected Eleanor's privacy for 70 years. We'll protect yours, too. As the sun set and her new neighbors headed home, Maya stood in the round doorway with Harper at her side, watching the taillights disappear down the mountain road. For the first time since her ex-husband had left her, for the first time since her world had fallen apart, Maya didn't feel alone. She felt surrounded, supported, believed in. She felt like someone worth protecting, someone worth fighting for. That night, she wrote a letter, one she would never send, but one she needed to write. Dear Eleanor, I'm starting to understand what you did, what you sacrificed, what you built. I'm starting to see why you chose me, even if I don't feel worthy of it yet. But I promise you this: I will not let them take it. I will not let the Whitmores, or my ex-husband, or anyone else destroy what you spent your life protecting. I will fight the way you taught me to fight, with documentation, with truth, and with the support of people who believe in something bigger than profit. Thank you for seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. Thank you for believing I was strong enough for this. I hope I can prove you right. With love. Maya. She folded the letter and placed it inside one of Eleanor's empty journals, adding her own voice, her own documentation that would outlive them both. Because Maya understood now that this wasn't just about gems or money or even safety for her and Harper. It was about legacy, about women who refused to be silenced or stolen from, about protecting beauty and knowledge from those who would lock it away for selfish gain. Eleanor had fought that fight for 70 years. Now it was Maya's turn, and she was ready. The restraining order against James Whitmore was granted within a week, but Maya knew it wouldn't stop him. Men like James didn't respect legal boundaries. They respected power. And in their world, power came from money, connections, and a willingness to play dirty. But Maya was learning to play a different game, one where power came from documentation, community support, and the kind of stubborn resolve that had kept Eleanor fighting for 70 years. The confrontation came on a cold morning in late April, exactly 3 weeks after Maya had first pried open the frozen doors. She was in the vault with Dr. Sarah Chen and her grad students, photographing a particularly remarkable specimen of Montana agate, when the security alarm began to blare. Maya's heart stopped. Harper was upstairs, Apom was in the main room, doing her homework at the table. She scrambled up the stone stairs, taking them 2 at a time, with Dr. Chen right behind her. As they burst into the circular room, Harper was pressed against the far wall, her eyes wide with fear. Outside the round windows, Maya could see 3 black SUVs parked in the clearing. And standing at the door, pounding so hard the wood shuddered, was James Whitmore. "I know you're in there, Maya," he yelled, his voice slick with the same false friendliness that had unnerved her before. "We need to talk. I have documents that prove several specimens in your collection were illegally removed from federal land. The Bureau of Land Management is very interested in this matter. You can talk to me now, come to a reasonable arrangement, or you can talk to federal investigators later. Your choice." Maya's hands were shaking, but not with fear. It was rage. She grabbed the satellite phone Sheriff Chen had helped her acquire and dialed his number as she walked toward the door. She didn't open it, didn't unlock it, just shouted through the heavy timber. "The Bureau of Land Management has no interest in this collection, because every specimen was legally acquired with proper documentation. I have 43 years of receipts, permits, and correspondence to prove it. But you know who federal investigators are interested in. Men who violate restraining orders and make false claims to the authorities. Sheriff Chen is on his way. I suggest you leave before he gets here." "You're making a mistake," James snarled, the false friendliness gone now. "You're just some broke single mom who got lucky. You have no idea what you're up against. My family has been collecting for 4 generations. We have resources, connections, lawyers who will make your small-town attorney look like a joke. You can't win this." "I already have," Maya said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "Eleanor spent 70 years beating your family. I have her documentation, her legal team, and something your family has never had: genuine respect for what these specimens represent. They aren't trophies to be locked in a vault. They are scientific treasures that deserve to be studied and shared." "Naive," James spat. "You think anyone cares about science? This is about money, about ownership, about power, and you have none of it." "Actually," Dr. Sarah Chen said, stepping up beside Maya, "she has the full support of the Montana State University Department of Geology, the Mineralogy Division of the Smithsonian Institution, and the Gemological Institute of America, all of whom I have contacted about this collection. We are prepared to go public with its existence and the remarkable legacy of Eleanor Hartwick." I'm quite certain the press coverage would make it very difficult for you to make any claims that aren't immediately challenged by people who actually know what they're talking about. Maya heard engines in the distance. Sheriff Chen's patrol car appeared through the trees, followed by two other vehicles. The sheriff got out slowly, his hand resting casually on his belt near his sidearm, and walked toward the SUVs. "James Whitmore," he called out. "You are in violation of a restraining order. You have two options. Leave now, and I'll consider this a warning, or refuse, and I will arrest you for criminal trespass and harassment." The cameras are recording all of this, by the way. Very thorough documentation, that new security system. James stood frozen for a long moment. Maya could see the calculation on his face, the weighing of options. Finally, he turned and stalked back to his SUV without another word. The three vehicles pulled away slowly, deliberately, making sure Maya understood this was not over. But as the dust settled and silence returned to the mountain clearing, Maya realized something fundamental. She had held her ground. She had faced down the same man who had terrorized Eleanor for decades, and she had won. Not with violence or threats, but with preparation, support, and the absolute certainty that she was protecting something important. Sheriff Chen came to the door, and Maya opened it with trembling hands. "You okay?" he asked. "Yes," Maya said, and she meant it. "We're okay." "Good, because that recording is going straight to the county prosecutor. Whitmore just made a very expensive mistake, violating a restraining order on camera, making threats. It's all documented now. His lawyers are going to have a hell of a time explaining this one away." After the sheriff left, Maya sat at the table and pulled Harper into her arms. Her daughter was shaking, but trying to be brave, the way 8-year-olds do when they're scared but don't want to show it. "I was so scared, Mommy," Harper whispered. "That man seemed so mean." "I know, sweetie, but he's gone now, and he won't be back." "How do you know?" "Because we're not alone. We have friends, people who care about us, people who believe what we're protecting is important. And that makes us stronger than he is." That night, after Harper had finally fallen asleep, Maya sat with Dr. Chen by the fire, the quiet of the mountains settling around them like a protective blanket. Sarah Chen sat by the fireplace. The professor had decided to stay a few more days, concerned for Maya's safety and wanting to finish documenting the collection. "You handled that incredibly well," Sarah said. "Most people would have crumbled under that kind of pressure." "I have practice," Maya said softly. "My ex-husband spent months making me feel powerless, worthless, like I was nothing without him. I believed it for a while. But being here, knowing what Eleanor built, knowing she chose me to protect it, I realized he was wrong. I was never powerless. I just hadn't found my purpose yet." "What are you going to do with the collection, long term?" Sarah asked. Maya had been turning the question over in her mind for days, pondering it as she worked, as she played with Harper, as she walked through the underground chamber, touching specimens older than human civilization. "I want to create something Eleanor would be proud of," Maya said slowly. "Not a private collection, locked away, and not just a donation to some museum where it would get lost in storage. I want to build an educational center, right here on this property. A place where students can come to learn, where researchers can study, where the public can see what Eleanor spent her life protecting. I want it to be living, breathing, meaningful." Sarah's eyes lit up. A research station and a museum combined. With Eleanor's documentation, the specimens themselves, this location, it could be incredible. The state of Montana would partner with you, provide academic oversight, help with funding and programming. This could be a model for how private collections can become a public good. It would take years, Maya said. The best things always do, but you have time now. You have the resources, a community that supports you, and a collection that deserves to be shared with the world. Maya looked around the circular room, at the stone walls and wooden beams, at the round door that had felt so alien just a few weeks ago but now felt like home. Eleanor lived in isolation to protect this. I don't want that to be the story anymore. I want the story to be about what happens when you open the doors, when you let people in, when you share something beautiful instead of hiding it away. The legal battle with her ex-husband came to a head 2 weeks later. Helena filed a comprehensive response to his claims, documenting in minute detail why the inheritance was not subject to the division of marital assets. The structure of the trust, the timing, the specific language of Eleanor's will. It all built an irrefutable case that Maya's ex-husband had no legal standing. But he pushed anyway, hiring an expensive lawyer from Denver who filed motion after motion, trying to find some angle, some piece of leverage. It was costing him thousands of dollars. Money Maya knew he didn't have. Money he was likely borrowing or stealing from someone else. The hearing was held in Billings on a Tuesday morning in early May. Maya sat at the table with Helena, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, watching her ex-husband stride into the courtroom with his lawyer, as if he'd already won. He looked thinner than she remembered, his face drawn, the expensive suit hanging loosely on his frame. For a moment, Maya felt something like pity. Then she remembered the debt he'd left her, the nights she'd worked 3 jobs while he partied away their savings, the way he'd abandoned Harper without a backward glance. And the pity evaporated. His lawyer made a passionate argument about fairness, about how Maya couldn't be allowed to benefit from a windfall, while her ex-husband suffered, about how the timing of the inheritance was suspicious. Helena's response was surgical. She presented the trust documents, showing the collection had been in custodianship since 1989, decades before Maya had ever met her ex. She presented Eleanor's will, filed 23 years ago, explicitly naming Maya as the steward. She presented documentation of every attempt by Maya's ex to steal, hide, or waste marital assets during their marriage. Your Honor, Helena said, her voice quiet and devastating. Mr. Thornton is attempting to claim an interest in assets specifically structured to be protected from exactly this kind of opportunistic claim. He abandoned his wife and child, stole their savings, destroyed her credit, and now he wants to benefit from a legacy left to her by a woman who specifically wanted to help victims of financial betrayal. The law is unequivocal. He has no claim to this, none whatsoever. The judge, a woman in her 60s with graying hair and no patience for nonsense, took less than 10 minutes to deliberate. Mr. Thornton's motion is denied in its entirety. The inheritance in question is held in an educational trust, of which Ms. Thornton is the steward, not the owner. She has no personal property interest that would be subject to marital division. Furthermore, this court finds Mr. Thornton's attempt to claim an interest in this inheritance to be frivolous and potentially harassing. Should he file any further motions on this matter, this court will consider sanctions. We are concluded. Maya felt something in her chest release, something that had been coiled tight since the day her ex-husband left. It wasn't quite forgiveness, but it was freedom. She no longer had to be afraid of him, no longer had to worry about him taking what she had built. He had no power over her. As they walked out of the courthouse, her ex tried to catch her eye, tried to say something, But Maya walked past him without a glance. He wasn't worth her time. He never had been. Outside in the bright May sunshine, Harper was waiting with Carol from the gas station, who had driven them to Billings. When Harper saw Maya's face, she ran to her. "Did we win, Mommy?" "Yes, sweetheart," Maya said, scooping her daughter into her arms. "We won." Over the next 3 months, Maya's life transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined. The Educational Trust provided a salary for her work as curator and site manager. Enough that she no longer had to work 3 jobs, enough that she could finally breathe. She hired contractors to properly renovate the house, installing modern heating, air conditioning, and plumbing while preserving the unique character Eleanor had built into every curved wall and round window. She turned the second underground chamber, which had been Eleanor's lab, into a functional research space where scientists from Montana State and other universities could come to study the collection. Dr. Sarah Chen became the academic director, overseeing research projects and creating educational programs. The main underground chamber remained as Eleanor had left it, a breathtaking display of geological wonders. But Maya added placards telling Eleanor's story, explaining how one determined woman assembled the most comprehensive collection of American gemstones through decades of careful work, scientific knowledge, and unwavering dedication. By August, they were ready for a soft opening. It wasn't a big public announcement yet, just an invitation to the scientific community, to museums and universities. The response stunned Maya. Researchers flew in from across the country to study specimens they had only read about in Eleanor's published papers. Museum curators made offers for long-term loans. Graduate students applied for on-site residencies. The town of Red Lodge embraced the project completely. Local businesses began advertising themselves as the gateway to the Hartwick collection. The Historical Society created exhibits on Eleanor's life. Even Carol's gas station started selling postcards featuring the Hobbit House and its remarkable contents. One evening in late September, as the aspen trees turned to gold and the first snow dusted the mountain peaks, Maya sat on the hillside above the house with Harper. Below them, the circular stone structure looked like something out of a dream, smoke curling from the chimney and warm light glowing in the round windows. "Do you like living here?" Maya asked her daughter. "I love it," Harper said instantly. "I have my own room now, and friends at school, and Carol taught me how to identify quartz. Did you know there are like 100 different kinds?" Maya smiled. "I did, actually." "Mommy, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you happy now? Like for real happy, not just pretending?" Maya considered the question seriously. She thought of the woman she had been 8 months ago, exhausted, terrified, and drowning in debt. She thought of the drive to Montana with everything they owned in garbage bags. She thought of pushing open those frozen doors and discovering Eleanor's legacy. "Yes, sweetheart," she said softly. "I'm very happy, happier than I've been in a long time. It's because of the stones and a lot of things. Because we have a home now. Because we're safe. Because I get to do work that matters. But mostly it's because I learned something important." "What?" "That I'm stronger than I ever thought I was. That I don't need someone else to complete me or give me value. That I can protect something precious and build something meaningful, and that I don't have to do it alone." Harper leaned her head against her mother's shoulder. "I always knew you were strong. Even when you were tired all the time and worried about money, you never gave up on me." Tears welled in Maya's eyes. I will never give up on you, sweetheart, no matter what. The official grand opening of the Eleanor Hartwick Educational and Research Center took place on a crisp October morning, exactly 6 months after Maya had first pushed open the frozen doors. Over 200 people attended: scientists, educators, museum professionals, and most importantly, the people of Red Lodge who had supported Maya from the beginning. Sheriff Chen gave a speech about Eleanor's legacy and her importance to the community. Dr. Sarah Chen spoke of the collection's scientific significance. Margaret from the library talked about Eleanor's dedication to knowledge and education. Then it was Maya's turn. She stood at a podium set up in the clearing outside the Hobbit House, looking out at the faces that had become so familiar and dear, and tried to find the words to express what this journey had meant. 6 months ago, she began, her voice stronger than she expected. I was broke, exhausted, and barely surviving. I had been betrayed by someone I trusted, left with nothing but debt, and a daughter who depended on me. When I received the letter about inheriting this property, I thought maybe it was a chance to sell something and get back on my feet. I never imagined it would change my entire life. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Eleanor Hartwick spent 70 years protecting this collection, fighting off people who wanted to take it, living in isolation to keep it safe. She could have sold any one of these specimens and lived in comfort for the rest of her life. But she didn't, because she understood that some things are worth more than money. Knowledge is worth protecting. Beauty is worth preserving. Legacy is worth fighting for. Maya looked at Harper, who was standing with Carol in the front row, beaming with pride. Eleanor left me more than precious stones and property. She left me proof that one woman's determination can create something lasting, something important, something life-changing. She left me a roadmap for how to stand up to people who try to take what isn't theirs. She left me the courage to believe that I was strong enough to do it. Her voice caught slightly, but she pushed on. This center isn't just about stones, though the stones are incredible. It's about what's possible when you refuse to give up. When you build a team of people who believe in something bigger than themselves. When you honor the past while creating something new. Eleanor protected this collection alone for 70 years. Now, we get to share it with the world. The applause was warm and genuine. As Maya stepped down from the podium, she was surrounded by people congratulating her, asking questions, and sharing their own stories of struggle and transformation. But the most meaningful moment came later, after the crowds had dispersed and the sun was setting. Maya stood alone in the underground chamber, walking among the display cases one last time before they were opened to the public the next day. She stopped before the largest sapphire, the one Dr. Chen said could be worth $3 million, and gazed into its impossible blue depths. That single stone could have solved every financial problem she'd ever had. It could have paid off the debts, bought a house, secured Harper's future. But to sell it, to keep them all locked away, would have been a betrayal of everything Eleanor had worked for. More importantly, it would have been a betrayal of the woman Maya had become. She was no longer the person who had arrived 6 months ago, scared, desperate, and willing to sell anything to survive. She was someone who understood that some things were worth more than their price tag. That legacy and purpose and doing right by the people who believed in you mattered more than comfort or convenience. She heard footsteps on the stone stairs and turned to see Helena, her lawyer and now her friend, descending into the room. I have something for you, Helena said, holding out a small wooden box. I found it in Eleanor's safe deposit box when I was closing her estate. She left instructions that you were to receive it after the center was opened. Maya opened the box with trembling hands. Inside, on a bed of velvet, lay a simple silver ring set with a small Montana sapphire. Nothing like the massive showpieces in the collection, just a modest stone in an elegant setting. And beneath it, one last letter. My dearest Maya, it began. If you are reading this, then you did it. You protected the collection. You stood up to the vultures, and you created something meaningful from what I left behind. I am proud of you, though I will never get to say it in person. This ring was the first sapphire I ever found, back in 1945 when I was just starting out. It isn't valuable compared to the rest of the collection, but it means more to me than all the others combined, because it was the beginning. It was the moment I realized I could make something remarkable of my life, if only I was willing to work hard and refuse to give up. I want you to have it as a reminder of your own beginning. 6 months ago, you thought you were inheriting a house. What you truly inherited was the opportunity to discover who you are. I hope you like what you've found. Keep fighting. Keep building. Keep believing that one woman's determination can change the world, because it can. I am proof of that. And now, so are you. With all my love and pride, Eleanor. Maya slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if Eleanor had known her size, or perhaps as if the ring itself had been waiting all these years just for her. She stood there in the room, surrounded by millions of dollars worth of precious gems. But what she treasured most was this simple silver band, and the woman who had believed in her enough to make it all possible. The months that followed brought their own challenges and triumphs. The center drew visitors and researchers from all corners of the globe.